Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Olivia Clayton and I'm the manager of Healthy Start, which is a national strategy that aims to improve health and wellbeing outcomes for children whose parents have learning difficulties. We are really pleased to be able to bring a direct family story about what has worked and why for a daughter and her dad who has learning difficulties. For those of you who are not familiar with Healthy Start, I just want to clarify that webinars are just one part of what we do. We also provide summaries of latest research on our website. We have best practice information around certain topics there. We call these practice points. And we also have information there about evidence-based resources for working with parents with learning difficulties. As a part of Healthy Start, we also host an online practice network where members can share knowledge, join groups or co-develop ideas. And there will be a recording of this webinar uploaded onto the online practice network this afternoon. And our guest will be online there to continue discussion. We also run face-to-face workshops and forums. Essentially, we work to build the capacity of individuals and agencies to address the needs of parents with learning difficulties in their area, using research and working through it to fit it to their context. So we might co-develop training programs or presentations, and we look to find and develop leaders in this field, and we support these people to lead change in their area. So just some quick housekeeping. If you're having any technical difficulties, please call Laura Nicholson for support on 86603538. Her details are also in your GoToWebinar control panel. And as live attendees, you have the opportunity to ask questions of our presenter. To do this, click on your control panel for GoToWebinar. You will see a box where you can post questions. And I encourage you to submit a question here at any time throughout the presentation. We'll go for about 30 minutes, and in the last 15 minutes I will pick out some of the questions you've submitted for our speaker to respond to. As I mentioned, we'll continue discussion after the webinar on our online practice network, so if you are not a member, I encourage you to sign up. And we'll also post the recording of the webinar on the discussion page this afternoon. And finally, at the commencement of question time, we just ask that you complete a short webinar evaluation survey that will appear on your screen. It should take about 2 to 3 minutes. Now, as way of introduction, I want to clarify quickly what we mean by the term learning difficulties. Thank you to the person who asked about this in their registration. So, as most of you would know, there are different terms used in different countries for what we call intellectual disability here. So the UK use the term learning disability. The US have only just recently changed from using mental retardation to using intellectual disability. And then, of course, individuals may use terms that better suit them, such as I am a slow learner or I have problems with reading and writing. So when Healthy Start say the term learning difficulties, we really mean parents who might be identified by services as persons with an intellectual disability or more of a borderline intellectual functioning. So this term is designed to include people who may have been diagnosed with an intellectual disability and are now exercising their right to parent, as well as that hidden majority, so that term coined by UCLA's Robert Edgerton, the parents who, when at school, may have been labelled as slow or having developmental delay or learning difficulties, but on leaving school they live in the community with few, if any, specialised supports, and it's only when they become parents that their general cognitive ability is questioned. Now, the evidence around best practice for supporting parents with intellectual disability is applicable to a much broader group than just those who have happened to receive a diagnosis. There's been over 400 studies published on parents with learning difficulties. Research is focused on what we call parenting capability or parenting capacity and the support that parents might need. And we know from this research that parents with learning difficulties can provide good enough parenting when adequate supports are in place. And we also know that parental IQ is not a predictor of parenting ability or capacity. We know that parenting skills are learned. They're not inherited. No one is born knowing how to parent. So that means that parenting skills can be taught and learned. Just before I introduce my speaker for today, I wanted to look at who registered. So who do we have in the audience? Well, we have 93 people who registered for today. That's a real mix of roles you can see there. Our largest numbers of registrations are from case managers, which make up 14%. Next, 19% are in management positions, which includes the director level, managers of projects, centres and team leaders. And 20% of you are here as psychologists or other allied health professions such as OTs or speech pathologists. Now, we were hoping to get more family members of parents with learning difficulties and parents themselves. However, we only had a couple of people who identified as such. So can I ask or suggest that others mention or pass this link on, or the link onto the recording of the webinar to families that you work with. Now, we're interested in why you joined the webinar today and have a quick live poll for you to respond to before I introduce our guest. Which of the following motivated you to join the webinar today? About 80% of you have voted. Just a couple more seconds. Thank you for your responses. That's great. I'm going to close the poll now. So it's an almost even split. 59% of you say that you're keen to hear about the experience of the family member, and 41% of you say that you don't know much about the topic of parenting with learning difficulties and you would like to know more. So that's great feedback for us. Those of you who are here because you don't know much about parenting with learning difficulties and you would like to know more, this webinar just won't cover everything that you're wanting, but a great place to start learning about what is best practice with parents with learning difficulties is to have a read through the resources section of our website, particularly our practice points. And you may like to watch a number of our videos in the videos section of the Online Practice Network. And please also feel free to contact me directly. So I would like to now introduce you to our guest speaker. Lisa immigrated from the USA some 35 years ago, marrying an Aussie and moving to Perth. She and her husband have one son and one daughter, both who now have their own children. Lisa's son has an intellectual disability, and she explains that, like all parents of children with a disability, she has always worked hard and persistently to find her way through the system in order to find the best opportunities, help, best schooling and best services for her son. She has a lot of what should be very valuable insight into how she has done that to support her son in his parenting role, and I'll hand you over now to Lisa.
Hello. First of all, I would like to thank everyone that has chosen to participate in my seminar. I am hoping that some of you are just parents like me, parents that work so hard to provide the very best for our children, particularly those with an intellectual disability, through all of their life stages, who now may be pondering the possibility of their adult child becoming a parent. Excuse me. It is very daunting and can often seem to be an unrealistic dream. But I'm saying dream it. It can happen and it can be great. I have never forgotten a couple incidents that happened to my husband and I. Maybe some of you parents have had similar experiences. The first one was my husband and I were talking to a friend of ours about our dream that one day our son would marry and have a child. We had thought it was a bit of a far-out idea, but it was our dream. This friend then questioned our mindset and asked, "Why are you always striving for normalcy with your son?" And he continued to question our philosophy, our approach and our dreams, as if we were setting the bar way too high in what we could expect or aim for our son's life. This was back when our son was around 16 years old. He's now 32, and I've never forgotten that conversation. And needless to say, that friend is no longer in my circle of friends. The other time when we were telling a friend about our son's decision to marry, they remarked, "Oh, but they don't even know what love is. It is not just cuddling up in front of the TV." I don't know if outsiders like this, and by outsiders I mean those who have not had the experience of raising a child with a disability, if they have any idea how hurtful these kinds of comments are and how misguided. Of course we aim for goals that are as normal as possible for our children. Why wouldn't we? Of course we dream that our children will grow up, have a job, find somebody that loves them, and then have a child of their own. We want this for all of our children. Yes, we know there will be many challenges with all of this. We know that because everything we have ever done for our child has been full of challenges, way more than normal. But we have continued to set our goals high and keep on working towards them. We know that as parents of such children, it is us who steer the boat, so to speak, as it is usually the case that our children are not exposed to as many windows of opportunity as most children are. If they were, they probably would not recognize them as such. Therefore, it is our responsibility as parents of these children to bring those windows of opportunity to them, or at least show them the windows, and maybe even open them for them. I want to stop at this point and clarify some terminology so that through the rest of my presentation we are all on the same page. Learning difficulty versus intellectual disability, and I know Olivia touched on this in her introduction. This is my interpretation. Learning difficulty. People who may process information differently and at a different pace than most other people. Therefore, learning becomes difficult. Intellectual difficulty or intellectual disability. People that have been diagnosed as having an actual intellectual disability. For the purpose of my presentation, I'm going to lump these two together and call them learning difficulties, as that is really what we are actually dealing with in regards to my topic. Both categories require specific training of skills, and this context regarding parenting, that most people acquire incidentally and that enables individuals to live in the community and raise their children without supervision in doing so. I also want to clarify a couple other things regarding my presentation. Firstly, I want to point out that trying to fit our story into a half-hour time slot has been quite a challenge, so please be aware that this is a very condensed version. I also want to recognize and acknowledge that every person with a learning difficulty or intellectual disability has different levels of capabilities and associated limitations. In my presentation, I want to be positive and optimistic about my family's story, but I do not want to come across as being so naive that I assume our story can be relevant to all families. Of course, it depends on all of the circumstances. Common difficulties of people with a learning disability or learning difficulties or an intellectual disability. Attention span and concentration, learning and remembering, problem solving, communication, in particular, difficulty in processing and responding in a timely manner, difficulty in finding the words to express what they're trying to say, often leading to frustration, confusion, and anger, and difficulties with social skills. Today, an individual with learning difficulties wanting to become a parent is still likely to encounter significant opposition from their family, community, and the system that is set up to support them. There is a general assumption of presumed inadequacy. The main message of my presentation is that parents with learning difficulties can parent well, with the right support and training matched to their learning needs. I will go even further with this to say that I believe that their children can be amazing, well-adjusted, and compassionate people, maybe even because their parent has a learning difficulty. I've decided to use pseudonyms for my son and his family today. I decided this because he and his family are not involved in the webinar that I am presenting, and probably won't ever see it. I feel that it is not right for me to publicly use their actual names. Also, by not doing so, I feel that I can perhaps speak a bit more openly than I might otherwise feel comfortable doing. My son and I have been asked to speak at a few seminars over the last several years, and we have done so always together. It has been wonderful for him to be able to share his positive experiences of fatherhood and also to be able to realize that his story is pretty special, an inspiration. I will give you a short overview of our son. Our son was born with a rare genetic disorder called Cri-du-Chat, or Syndrome 5. A small part of his fifth chromosome is missing. He wasn't diagnosed as such or given a title for this disorder until he was about 18 years old. Genetic testing just wasn't done automatically in those days. Anyway, we then came to learn that any offspring would have a 50% chance of having the same disorder, which apparently is the case with most genetic disorders. The effects of the disorder have thankfully been fairly mild with our son, most having this disorder being much more severely affected, unable to walk, unable to talk. Therefore, offspring of our son could be much more severely disabled. This is a scary thought, and one that anyone with a diagnosed genetic disorder should be aware of in order to make a responsible and informed decision of choice in relation to reproduction. My son met his wife on a boat bound for Manila when he was on a backpacking trip in the Philippines with his dad. His wife does not have any disabilities. They fell in love, and over time they decided to marry, and she moved to be with him in Perth. There were lots of complications now, as he had to adjust to living with someone. He had moved out of our family home a few years earlier and had training with Westcare for living independently. He had to get used to someone moving his things around. He had to get used to having to think about someone else. He had to learn to communicate with someone in an intimate relationship. There were many challenges, and at times we didn't know if he could handle it, and vice versa, if she could handle it, and whether they would make it. They will be married 10 years next April. Their marriage is full of challenges, not only regarding his intellectual disability, but also cultural differences and personality differences. But with a lot of support, they are still together. After marriage, his wife decided she really wanted to have a child. Our son was pretty daunted by the idea, but knew how strongly his wife wanted to have a baby. They fell pregnant naturally. As we were aware of the 50% chance of offspring inheriting the syndrome, we felt the responsible thing to do would be to have the fetus tested. This had to be done at 14 weeks. Sadly, the test results came back positive. A medical termination had to be carried out. This was the saddest and most difficult day of our lives. We then found out about genetic testing. They then did IVF with the genetic testing, which had to be done in Melbourne. A successful pregnancy and birth followed, with a beautiful and completely healthy baby girl. As parents, they were blessed. As grandparents, we were also blessed. Just a note that this procedure would only be done when there was a diagnosed genetic disorder, not a learning difficulty. Wansley and the Healthy Start Program, training. Wansley, a service provider, enhancing the care of children, delivering the Healthy Start Program, amongst other programs. Healthy Start Program, a tool set or program designed by the Parenting Research Center in Melbourne to assist parents with learning difficulties. The idea of our son taking care of his baby on his own then came up, of course. He wanted to be a hands-on dad, and he wanted to know how to take care of his baby, just like his wife did. He wanted to be able to do all the things he saw other dads do with their kids. Why wouldn't he? But we all had to feel confident that he would be able to watch over his baby and keep her out of harm's way. We all needed to know that he would be able to react quickly to any emergency situation that might lead danger to her. I started shopping around for a service to help us. This is when we found Wansley and the Healthy Start program that they run for parents with learning difficulties. The program sounded just perfect, exactly what we were looking for. Wansley provides one-on-one training at flexible times that fit in with the client's schedule, specifically designed programs for people with an intellectual disability or learning difficulties. A program set at the client's pace with goals driven by the client. Delivered in the home, which is essential. Family members, including the family support person, can be involved. A staff that remains stable. Training that has no set end. It can continue until all of the goals have been met. Can return to the program at later stages in parenting, if and when required. Once a month, we would have a casual and productive meeting at my son's house over a cuppa and cake. We would discuss the achievements and the next training goals. It was great that his wife and I were included in this. We were all in this together, wanting the best for the whole family. It was truly a team effort. It was these aspects of the Healthy Start program that made it so successful, and the fact that the trainer was able to maintain professionalism at all times and also be relaxed and comfortable in the home just like a friend. Their first session was when my granddaughter was only 2 weeks old. Kate came a few times a week and fit the times in, usually about an hour and a half each, before my son went to work at 11 o'clock. They covered everything from how to hold a baby and change arms when your arms get tired, how to change nappies, dress and bathe the baby, house safety and making the house baby-proof, general parenting activities or general parenting education. The final training was in how to take the baby for a walk in the pram, what to take with them, the importance of and how to ensure that he had a hold on the pram at all times and not to leave the pram to go over to push the walk button, the safest route to take, how and where to best cross the street, where the baby change rooms were located in the area that he would be walking, etc. We used to joke about the fact that the pram looked like a covered wagon. In it, he had spare nappies and clothes, of course, food for both the baby and himself, the potty in a plastic bag that was tied onto the handle of the pram, toys, books, water bottles, spare blankets, plastic sheets in case it might rain. He had all of this, and he went through this gathering of these activities, or these items, every time he went for a walk. It took ages to get out of the house. They would practice with the doll first, and then with the baby. It was done in a very step-by-step manner, which worked well for my son. My son learns best when the tasks are broken down into small steps, when verbal instructions are not too wordy, when he is not having to filter out other noise, when he is shown what to do, told why it should be done that way, when the mood is relaxed and not rushed, when he is able to do it over and over again until he masters it. After 1 year in the program, Kate and Lee announced, "Congratulations, you have graduated." And of course we celebrated with another cuppa and cake. They felt our son had the skills needed now for safely caring for his child. We were all so proud of him, and he was so happy. She is not a baby anymore. She is now 5.5 years old. Our son has been and continues to be a wonderful hands-on dad. He often holds the fort when his wife is at night school or working, and he does everything with her that any father would do. He and his daughter are very close. Her daddy is her hero, and she runs to hug him when he comes in the door. They both love to go out and are often seen on the streets of Subiaco, his 5.5-year-old striding ahead, with Daddy, with his slightly ungainly gait, trying to keep up. They go to the movies together, to the park, to the library, out to lunch, and they visit the op shops together. Thanks to the help from Wansley and the Healthy Start program, he has achieved his goal of being a hands-on dad, and he loves it. Support, family and professional. In order for a person with a learning disability or difficulties to be able to be a hands-on parent, they require assistance support from both a family member or members and practitioner and professionals. The family support. The family support person provides support at the grassroots level, the 24/7 available person, the one with the antennas out at all times to be sure that things are going well and that all is under control. The family support person seeks out services that they think the family will need. Gather information about it, check that it is relevant or not, then introduce it to the family. Be careful not to overwhelm the family. The family support person needs to be proactive. They need to be sensitive to the family's needs and feelings. Needs to deal with real things, not just talk airy-fairy about topics. They need to assist in representing the family and their views when needed. The family support person also needs to maintain particularly close contact with the family, both physically and communication-wise. Therefore, needing to be careful not to rock the boat too much with any one member of the family. It is essential to maintain open and amicable communications with all family members, including the child. Remain aware of the family's schedules and quietly oversee that things go smoothly. If it is not going smoothly, then helping to figure out why, considering alternative ways of doing things so that they do go smoothly, stepping in with support and suggestions when required. Create and maintain involvement with the child's school. For example, meeting the teacher, helping out when possible at the school, knowing what activities are happening at the school, and making sure that the family stays aware and involved with what is happening at the school. They might find it hard to read all the notes that come home from school, including how to help with homework. You don't want them to fall through the cracks in the school system. If possible, assist with the overseeing of finances to ensure that all bills are getting paid and that they are fine financially, being an authorized person to deal with the bank, Centrelink, etc. In my family, though my husband and my daughter both do provide support for our son and his family, I am the main family support for them. Be it right or wrong, the following is my belief in advocating for my son in his marriage and with his role as a father. I aim for him to have as normal a relationship with his wife as possible, knowing full well that who can define normal, but generally speaking. I don't expect or want his wife, if I can have a say in it or if I can help avoid it, to be his carer, his driver because he can't drive and never will be able to, his financial overseer as he would never be able to manage his money, his keeper as he gets paid near nothing at his job. As his advocate and his mother, I aim for him to have his independence, get to the places he wants and needs to go, be in charge of his weekly money, take his daughter out to places on his own. In other words, I don't want him to depend on his wife for all of this. I aim for their relationship to be as even as possible, each carrying a certain load, each bringing to the relationship things to offer and enhance their lives. I have always aimed and supported both he and his wife having as well-rounded lives as they can and are able to, and have always offered my assistance to help this happen. I then, as mother and advocate, help him to set up his life in as organized a fashion as possible, his timetable, his closet and clothes, his backpacks for various activities that he does. Figure out his finances and arrange with he and the bank to ensure that he has a certain amount in his key card account each week, different from the bill-paying account. Be a contact person for his work to assist with any work issues that may arise. I have authority with Centrelink and his bank to access pension, bank information, and am able to make inquiries on his behalf with insurance companies, etc. I remain flexible to drive him to and from outings with friends when I can, choosing generally not to have him standing around the city waiting for a cab, although he does that sometimes. I am just happy that he's going out and having a nice time, and he doesn't always have to worry about transport. Encourage him and help him to explore his local community, the gym, the pool, tennis classes, etc., so that his life is interesting and well-balanced. He needs that. Otherwise he feels trapped and disheartened, as anyone would. It also gives him things of interest to talk about with other people, which is important, so that he feels and is more inclusive within his community. This is so important for so many reasons, including safety, i.e., people knowing him and watching out for him in the community, him knowing shopkeepers, etc. I have organized a taxi user subsidy scheme card for him, which provides him with half-price taxi fares, and a cab charge gift card for paying his portion of the bill. I oversee the balance and top them up as required. I have and continue to go with him and his daughter to many local facilities so that he has learned firsthand where they can go, what they can do, etc., like the pool, the library, restaurants, parks. Also assisting him to be as involved as possible in his daughter's activities, taking her to piano lessons, swimming lessons, to the park, to play with her cousins and other kids, doing the school drop-off when he is not working that day. We work out any hitches through repetition. Then he is fine returning to these places with his daughter on his own. The professional support. Professional support is required for areas of expertise that the family support person does not have, to know where to refer the family if required, an avenue for accountability and documenting of needs and services being delivered, to provide a different voice than the family support person, which is very important, to provide support and act as a sounding board for the family support person. The two support roles coming together, family and professional. Our experience in working together with Wansley has shown us how these two support groups can work together to provide a full support base, hopefully with few gaps for the family. I will briefly refer back or revisit how Wansley delivers their program and what we found to work in bringing together family support and professional support, leading to a successful outcome. I'll just give you each a moment to recap on these points. Future support. One of the biggest concerns that parents with a child that has learning difficulties or an intellectual disability, one of the biggest concerns is, what happens when I go? This is a huge issue and one that the parents grapple with decades before they will actually need that new support system. We try to set things up in their lives that will carry on into the future as best as possible. When our son got married, I was able to put this worry to the side somewhat, though still continuing to help them to become well set up with a home, reliable car, organizational assistance, and so on. An unexpected blessing has come in the form of their little girl. She is amazing. By the age of 3, she was already demonstrating a high level of compassion, empathy, and insight, far beyond her years, particularly towards her daddy. She is a bit like radar in MASH. She is so tuned in. Her antennas are always out, and she seems to know what is going to be needed before anyone else realizes it. She sort of watches over her daddy, wanting to know where he is and that he is okay. If he accidentally drops something, she is there to pick it up or remind him to. If we are out in a new environment and he heads off to find the toilet or something, she says, "Oh, I will go with Daddy," to make sure he finds it. She is extremely organized, has attention to detail. She wants things to be right. She has a confidence to talk to anyone and ask if she has any questions. She has the makings to be an awesome advocate. I now know that our son will be fine way into the future, as I believe his daughter will be overseeing that all is good for Daddy. And I believe that she will have the skills to make sure that it is. What an amazing thing. I now come back to a statement I made in the beginning of my presentation. I believe that children of people with learning difficulties can be amazing, well-adjusted, and compassionate people, maybe even because their parent has a learning difficulty. All of this said, of course, I still do have a wish list. My wish list. I wish that there were set follow-up contact points made by the Healthy Start program or the like, coinciding with the milestone stages of the child, i.e., the child starting school, how to manage their homework, ensuring that the parent is okay communicating with the school, with the teacher, so that they don't fall through the cracks. Along these lines, I also just want to point out that in my granddaughter's classroom, I went to a meeting that the teacher was holding one night. Simply I went because my son and daughter-in-law were away at that time, so I went. And at the end of it, the teacher approached me, and she asked me a question that I knew exactly what she was asking me the question for, and that was for me to explain to her what the situation was with my son. She had met him before at a previous meeting. She wanted to understand, what the situation was. She obviously picked up that he was different, he had some issues, and she wanted to understand what those were. Luckily, I was in the situation there to be able to explain it to her. If I had not been there, and if nobody else had done that, the teacher would have been left not really knowing what the child's situation was at home. So that's just an example of that. I believe that the follow-up stages could be then at the time that the child goes to school, and then follow-ups at the age of approximately 10, 14, and 18. There will be issues all along, particularly at these milestones in the child's life, that the person with the learning difficulty is going to need assistance with in order to maintain a functional family. Relationship counseling, education for the whole family, particularly for the parents, then possibly for the child, as they realize that Daddy is different. How should this be discussed with the child? We are at this point right now, and as yet haven't worked out how to approach this. I suggest that most, if not all couples, with one or more having learning difficulties, will struggle with maintaining a healthy marital relationship, mainly due to poor communication skills. The need for relationship counseling, then, I feel is essential. Documentation of services and family issues that are relevant to the family for future reference, particularly in the case of a staff change in the service provider or when referrals take place, to ensure the best streamlining of service delivery for the family. Professional development, for want of another term, for the family support person, so they know they are on the right track, to help them in working out different approaches to try. In summary, before our son became a father, no one would have ever thought it possible that one day he would be a father and be able to care for and safely go out with his child. Now he is doing just that, and he is a fantastic, caring, and organized father. He has only achieved this with lots of determination, true grit, specialized training, and ongoing love and support. If anyone out there has a son or daughter with learning difficulties or an intellectual disability, and they think that one day they would like to have a child or may like to have a child, please remember my presentation today and give all the support and assistance you can give to make their dream come true. Yes, it will take full commitment on your part, but man, is it worth it. What more could one dream of than to be a grandparent, a hands-on grandparent? The following is a list of organizations and people that I would like to thank who have supported us over the years. They have all played an important part in shaping my son's or our son's life. I'll just let you read over these groups. Again, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank everyone that has made the time to participate in my presentation today. I hope you gained out of it what you had aimed to. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lisa, for a really insightful talk into your family experience. I really appreciate it. What was particularly interesting for me and positive, I think, really is right back at the beginning of your talk when you were saying that that really you looked to plan this pregnancy, and I think that that's fairly unusual from what we know about other parents with learning difficulties, and I wonder whether this is some sort of aim for the future for other families. Now, we've got a few questions that have come through, and I know we've only got about 5 more minutes, so I just wanted to let people know again that Lisa will be online after this on the Practice Network. Now, we've got a question here. It's fairly long. I'll try to summarise it as I read. So, what if the consumer is socially disadvantaged and doesn't have the wraparound care you provide for your son? Most service providers are not set up to provide the support you are prepared to do. I see this as a major stumbling block for any potential parents with ID. There's a few more details there. So thank you for that, that question, Warren. Did you have anything to respond to that, Lisa?
Yes, I do. Mm-hmm. Yes, I do want to respond to that because it's really very important, and obviously it's essential. How do I want to respond to that? People who don't have somebody like me or the family support that my son and his wife and family have, it's sort of a whole other topic that I would like to have developed later. But I actually do believe that there are a lot of parents out there that are doing a lot of what I've been talking about in the area of advocacy, but they just don't realize that they're actually doing advocacy. And I don't think that there's been much talk or training, if any, on how they can play a role in being an advocate for their child. I think this is an area that needs a lot more development. And of course the practitioner can't do it because they only see them every so often. There has to be somebody grassroots that is following through with all of the needs and helping to take care of things. So I guess that's my response is it's an area that needs to be developed. It's not there yet.
Great. So I'm going to end our webinar there and say thank you very much, Lisa, and we can continue discussion online. So thank you all for your attention today, and we would very much appreciate your feedback via the webinar evaluation survey that will appear on your screen in a few seconds. Have a great day, everyone.